we are seeing some more emphasis on using online tools in business. I do a lot of business consulting and help companies understand the way social media can help their businesses run and can make their employees feel more satisfied and more heard in their jobs. So hopefully that shift is leaking into the corporate world too. But ultimately, the bottom line is that after a certain amount of time, the students that we have now are going to be the CEOs. They're going to be the managers. And so they will, because they'll learn this way, they'll expect their employees to learn this way. And it won't be acceptable anymore to tell your employer, well, I don't know the answer to that question. Because the assumption is, well, you have access to most of human knowledge online. Why aren't you looking it up? Why aren't you engaging in a community of experts online and figuring it out?
Cool. And Philippe Touk says, a question for Sarah. What are some strategies to combat institutional resistance to these changes? And should we be exploring new certification methods to recognize the learning that takes place outside of these institutions?
Let me take the second part of the question first. I don't know that we need certifications. I think what we need are new classroom practices that allow for the inclusion of more self-driven and informal learning to be part of what they're assessed on as our classes. So instead of asking students to simply write papers and engage in the material that we've presented, we should be expecting them to bring in materials and knowledge that they've gained on their own independently, and giving them time to do that and showing them the importance of doing that.
Okay.
The first half...
Sorry, go ahead, Sarah. No, go ahead.
Okay, so
beg your pardon.
The first half of the question was about institutional hesitancy to engage these kinds of learning patterns, these kinds of independent learning skills online. Wow, it amazes me still that institutions of higher learning, especially, react negatively at all to teaching students how to be lifelong learners. It's still shocking to me. For example, the pushback against Wikipedia. Well, I don't let my students use Wikipedia as a source. I don't let them. We ban Wikipedia at our high school. And it's so sort of against instinct about how learning really happens in the great majority of our lives. Outside the classroom, this is how we learn. We learn from other people. We learn through experiences. We learn through finding answers to questions that we have, not waiting to take a class about something, not waiting until an instructor thinks it's appropriate to cover. If we want to know an answer, we find it. And institutions that push back against that kind of learning are against learning in general, I think. So I think what we have to overcome is we have to overcome the perception that self-driven learning and that community learning is less effective or is less important or is less influential than sort of institutionalized official learning. That's going to take time, I think.
Here's a good follow-on from that. ZPixel says, given how most high school students are very immersed in social media, isn't it less about teaching them social media and more about the age-old task of teaching them business communications, irregardless of the system?
Well, yeah, because the medium will always change, right? We're immersed in wikis and blogs and microblogs and virtual worlds right now, but who knows what it will be tomorrow. I'm not advocating that we need to teach them how to blog, for example. We need to teach them how blogs can be enlightening and how you can learn answers to questions by blogging. So it's much more about the learning processes that happen behind the technologies or through the practice of technology than what buttons to click. And business communication specifically, I think, is changing while we watch it. White papers are not the same as they were 10 years ago. We don't necessarily write memos anymore. We send emails. Help desks are moving away from the official support dialogues into Twitter and instant messaging. So we need to help students understand how to best, most effectively use each form of new communication so that they can apply that kind of critical insight to each one that comes along.
Okay, and Kay McLennan says, who is Keiko Mayako in Second Life, says, even if educators are less and less in the role of gatekeeper of higher education, having access to advanced technology is still a gatekeeper. What do you think higher education institutions should do to be more inclusive when it comes to disadvantaged groups? That is, be more inclusive when it comes, she said she's correcting, be more inclusive when it comes to all the new technology-driven tools. Sorry, did you get that, Sarah?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, and it's a critically important question, right? If we say that education is becoming more self-driven, more self-motivated, and more based in social media, then what about the students who have access to none of those tools? Well, certainly, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but education needs more funding, bottom line. Because when we don't provide students with access to technology, we're being negligent. Because they're certainly going to need that experience when they go out into the workplace. Whether they're going to be a cashier at McDonald's and have to interface with that computerized cash register, or they're going to be a CEO of a company, they're going to need to interface with technology. And they're going to need it in their personal lives as well. You know, that single mom who can't necessarily afford a whole bunch of health insurance can certainly go online and talk to other mothers who have kids who are similarly sick and find out good home-based remedies or, more inexpensive treatments, generic drugs. So it doesn't even have to be related to our professions. It's our lifestyles in general. And the price of technology is coming down, right? Because we need, with the exception of Second Life, of course, more applications are becoming web-based. And so, any computer that's going to have access to the internet and a relatively okay processor is going to give us access to most of these technologies because they're all based on the internet. So we need to get more computers into K-12. We need to get more computers into underprivileged areas so that everybody has access to these resources. I see it as important as providing, clean water and air because it's preparation for life, whether it's personal life or professional life. Having access to not just the buttons and the hard drives and the monitors, but having access to the people on the other side of all of those technologies is critical. It's just critical. So, we've just got to get better funding, and let's all fight that fight together. And I think lots of people are Negroponte's laptop, one laptop per child, and that kind of stuff is helping, but we need to do more.
Okay, and Life Factory Writer says, Sarah, how does one establish standards in a wholly democratized social media knowledge arena?
Wow, we have to teach standards personally. And I think it goes back to the critical literacy. It's the difference between just clicking the first link in a Google search and thinking that the information there is fact, and evaluating several different sources and finding reputable, trustworthy information. And when we teach students to evaluate information like that, we also teach them their role as trustworthy content providers too. And I don't think that we can develop an end-all be-all rubric for social media. What is a good blog, for example, is totally based on the goals of the blog and the goals of the blogger. So we have to teach a more complex, a more rich type of evaluative rubric that students can internalize and customize based on their own need at any time.